Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon and good evening. I am your host, Cowboy Williams, and this is the House of Moor. Now, the last time we sat down, we covered about 3 centuries of history, enough to see Moors get exiled from the land, shipped all over the world, but specifically through the Middle Passage and the transatlantic slave trade. Let's pause right there. Why do y'all take these transatlantic cruises? I have no idea. I have no idea. In any case, came a time where Moorish Americans were given a crossroads, and that crossroad had 3 different paths. Your path was either to be enslaved, killed, or exiled. And with that being said, shipped your ass all across the world. Landed here in America, where you were looked at not as a man, not as a woman, but as property. And so I want to fast forward a couple of years to the date of independence, 1776, where we had proclaimed independence from Great Britain and men were given certain unalienable rights.
And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, at the time of the Declaration, there were hundreds of thousands of enslaved African Americans who were denied these unalienable rights. Despite the fact that Thomas Jefferson was himself a slaveholder, he originally included this passage as a complaint against King George III. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This passage, and others related to slavery, was removed by the Second Continental Congress. Thomas Jefferson later claimed it had been removed due to pressure from delegates from South Carolina and Georgia, and acknowledged that Northerners also had financial interests in keeping slavery alive. All of this foreshadowed later compromises on slavery in the drafting of the Constitution.
Here you come. We just got done fighting in this fucking battle, and it's all these motherfucking dead British people around me, and I got this white American over here that I just got done fighting beside, and I got this slave right here that I just got done fighting beside, and we're all under the premise that if we win this, we're free.
We?
Wait, not you. See, when we said free, we meant all men under the sun, and what you are, sir. Oh no, you're property. I know you. I've never seen this is new AI right here. That property builds property. Property has built White Houses. Property has taken care of your children. Property has put food on your table. Property has defended your life. Never seen that before. Can ChatGPT get the fuck up and defend me, full chat? Like, let me create a fucking person and make it work for me for free. Even ChatGPT costs. All right, let's make a quick timeline. 1776, we declare our independence from Great Britain. Also, a little bit before that, 1775, is the Battle of Bunker Hill, where Negro Americans and Negro Brits are helping aid white-dominated countries to gain their independence or to keep the country from gaining independence. Either way, we didn't come out a victor on either side, as a matter of fact. So let's fast forward 10 years later to the Constitution. And in the Constitution, we're like, oh, well, you know what? You did do something for you. I know I called your property earlier. This time, I'm gonna give you not a whole person. We're gonna say you're 60% of a person by giving you 3/5 and declaring you 3/5 of a human. Progress. So you just got done fighting for freedom, and now you waiting. Cause they told you it was coming. It's gonna be here in a second. Shit never fucking comes. As a matter of fact, about 10 years later, they said, we got some legislation coming out, y'all should pay attention to that shit. All right. In walks Naturalization Act of 1790. What happens in that Naturalization Act?
With the United States Constitution already signed, Congress passed the Naturalization Act of 1790. This law allowed colonists who had been in the country for 2 years and who had stayed in one location for at least a year to become citizens. However, the law did not apply to everyone who lived in the colonies. Instead, it applied only to, quote, free white persons of, quote, good moral character.
So around about this time, I'm sure you can understand there's a whole lot of pissed off slaves right now. And we simmering, and it's building. And it starts to take off little by little and building up to what we call the Gullah Wars. Let's take a look.
If you think all rebellions end in days, think again. The Gullah Wars raged for over 40 years. Let's uncover this hidden chapter of history. In the shadowy swamps and dense forests of Florida, enslaved African Americans, many hailing from the Gullah people, made an unyielding stand for freedom. Side by side with their Seminole allies, they transformed the wilderness into their fortress, striking swiftly like shadows at night. For more than 40 years, they faced off against powerful military forces, refusing to surrender. This wasn't just a rebellion, it was a relentless saga of courage and defiance. These warriors, fueled by a blazing desire for freedom, turned resistance into an art form. The Gullah Wars aren't just a story of rebellion, they're an epic testament to the indomitable human spirit. A legacy of warriors who chose freedom over chains. Remember their fight, remember their courage, because freedom is never given, it's always fought for.
Before we get into the 1900s, let's have a word from our sponsors.
911, what is your emergency? I hear shots! Okay, ma'am, calm down. What kind of shots?
Now, what I do want to take away is Abraham Lincoln's moral clause in making the Emancipation Proclamation, and let you know that he didn't just wake up one morning with the Spirit of the Lord and just say, you know what? I have seen the plight of the black man, and it's deeply disturbing. I've seen how we've ravaged their culture. I've seen how we've taken from their people, and it's time to set them free. No. What happened was he saw how much ass we was whooping and then decided that it made him weaker in international eyes. So in order to unite the United States, let's go ahead and get rid of all this slave shit and make one huge army. Wouldn't that be better? Yeah, we wouldn't have France and Britain breathing down our neck the whole time. Yeah, we could be the strongest army in the world. We got all these niggas over here. We could be the strongest motherfucking army in the world. Set them free. From 1865 to 1877 was the Reconstruction era. We built schools, we voted, we built towns, homes, businesses. We did our thing. We did our big one, and I'm so proud of our ancestors during that time. In 1877, a political deal ended the Reconstruction completely. Federal troops withdrew, terror organizations began to rise. Here comes Jim Crow, here comes segregation, here comes voter suppression, here comes lynch laws. Let's get into it.
When the president issued the Emancipation Proclamation, it was not really something that had effect in Georgia because it was more aspirational and it was more strategic. President Lincoln was trying to increase the number of freed slaves in parts of the South who could fight against the Confederacy. But the Emancipation Proclamation did very little in terms of freeing slaves at the time it was issued in 1863. And finally, in April of 1865, when General Lee surrendered to General Grant in Virginia, we began to see in Georgia a real movement towards the freeing of slaves, but it was a slow process. Emancipation came almost place by place, slowly, because there were, in many parts of Georgia, not enough federal troops to enforce the end of slavery, to enforce the emancipation. So it became a very slow process. By 1868 in Georgia, there was enough federal troops to enforce the U.S. Constitution. And there was the passage of federal amendments to the U.S. Constitution. There was what we call today a Reconstruction Constitution adopted in Georgia in 1868, and that recognized the equality of people. It recognized the right of people to work and be paid for their work. And at that point, there began to be some African Americans who were actually elected to office because they were then able to have the vote. And there was great white resistance to this. The whole society in Georgia was built on the notion that white people were superior and black people were inferior. And between 1876 and 1896, there was a back and forth. It was a 20-year period in which this whole notion of the equality of every citizen was in play every day, whether it was someone trying to vote, someone trying to go to school, someone trying to get a job that paid a decent wage, someone trying to get a house that they could own themselves. Every part of society, there was an uncertainty about just how much equality under the law the state would permit. And white folks generally wanted no equality for African Americans, and black folks obviously wanted their full citizenship, the rights that they were entitled to under the new Reconstruction amendments. And generally, that fight went on, and there was an uncertainty about what it actually meant until a case went before the U.S. Supreme Court. And that case we now remember as Plessy versus Ferguson.
Plessy versus Ferguson was a Supreme Court case in 1896 involving an African-American man named Homer Plessy. It took place in Louisiana, and Homer Plessy sat in a white-only railroad car. And Louisiana, this railroad car company, they had separate cars for whites and blacks. And so he sat in the white-only railroad car, refused to leave. The case ends up going through the lower courts. It gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court decided that it did not violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So what they decided is separate but equal doctrine came to be. That as long as you have equal facilities, and they were anything but equal in the South, as long as you had equal facilities, it was okay to separate the races. It basically, what it allowed the southern states to do is some things they were already doing with their Jim Crow laws. They make African Americans to be second-class citizens.
Now, in addition to Jim Crow, we also have the Klan. And the Klan's been around since 1865, Christmas Eve to be exact. But around the time when we start to really become a thriving community, when we start to build our own towns and have our own banks and our own schools, that's when the Klan really starts to get active, because we now have collateral for them to target. We have Greenwood.
We generally call it the catastrophe because we feel like it wasn't a riot. We were not the perpetrators, we were the victims. But it took 80 years to get the state of Oklahoma to acknowledge that.
The Tulsa Race Massacre is believed to be one of the worst incidents of racial violence in American history. From May 31st to June 1st in 1921, as many as 300 people were killed, hundreds were injured, and thousands of buildings were destroyed.
On June 1st, they began to systematically destroy neighborhoods, and they had airplanes dropping things down on people's houses, and they had made up their minds to clear the entire area of black people.
It started after a newspaper reported a black man tried to sexually assault a white woman. Though it's still uncertain what exactly happened, many did not believe that story. The Oklahoma Historical Society said the most common explanation is Dick Rowland stepped on Sarah Page's foot when he entered the elevator, causing her to scream. A group of armed black men went to the courthouse to offer help protecting Rowland once they heard talks of lynching. A crowd of white men was also on the scene. A shot was fired and the riots began.
My parents were very distressed because here they are with 5 kids, and the schools had been, I went to Dunbar School, and that was reduced to just rubble. I mean, they blew it up.
Crowds of white rioters went to the Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street. It was home to an affluent African-American community with banks, hotels, theaters, and new homes.
They took my 8-year-old brother too, where they were holding all the black men. And we didn't know because we lived on one side of town and they lived on the other. We thought they were locking up the non-blacks too. But it so happened that it didn't occur that way. What they did was to disarm and lock up all black men And then they said to the mob, there's nothing out there now but women and children, so you can do whatever you want to do. And that was when the real terrible things started to happen.
It ended when the city was placed under martial law and National Guard troops were deployed. But Black Wall Street was devastated. Survivors never received compensation for what they lost.
Yeah, Rosewood.
It's a story that's rarely talked about, but it needs to be told. A dark moment in our state's history. The town of Rosewood was a small, predominantly black community not too far from Gainesville. It was destroyed at the hands of an angry racist mob. All that's left, their descendants who continue to tell their stories.
We were entrepreneurs. We had businesses. We had 3 churches in Rosewood. And this is in the early 1900s.
Rosewood is a part of Ebony Pickett's family history. She never lived there, but she can tell you all about it through stories handed down through 5 generations.
Everybody's lawns was manicured and there was roses all around, and it was almost like this picture perfect place.
That picture shattered on New Year's Day 1923 when a mob of white men invaded Rosewood, burning homes and churches and shooting people as they fled.
They came on the first day of January and they did not stop burning and shooting and hanging and lynching until January the 7th.
Pickett remembers being a young girl at family reunions and listening to the stories from the mouths of survivors.
When I would see the horror on their face, and then they would begin to wail and cry and, console each other. And it was like so emotional, and it was such a vivid picture because this wasn't just something I was reading in a book.
1923. The black town of Rosewood was a land of opportunity.
In 1997, Warner Brothers produced a movie about the town's history, bringing what happened on that tragic day to the big screen. The film, based on accounts at the time of what started the attack, allegations from a white woman in the neighboring community of Sumner that a black man had assaulted her. Pickett disputes that narrative. She says family members told her it was actually a white man who assaulted the white woman. Pickett's relative, Sarah Carrier, known as Aunt Sarah, was there.
And Aunt Sarah had been at her home that day, as well as with her granddaughter, Philomena. So both of them witnessed the white man that actually came into their home that she was with.
Aunt Sarah told the mob it was not true, but they didn't take her word. She would eventually be killed in the massacre.
These were my actual family members that was there and had remembered everything they had gone through. And they shared it with us, but they told us we could not tell anyone for fear that, the white mob would come back and kill them.
98 years later, their stories are still being told so that we may remember and never forget.
We have Durham.
Well, Durham was a place where blacks were successful down through the years. It just happened that there were some people who got together and started some businesses, and with the success that they had here, people came from everywhere just to see what was happening in Durham. W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington came to Durham and saw what was happening here and called it a mecca of black business. And the Black Wall Street name came from these efforts. And we had guides at the North Carolina Mutual, tour guides at the Mechanics and Farmers Bank, at North Carolina Central University, and other places around town just to show what was happening here that was different from what was happening in other communities. The business leadership was very important. It made a tremendous contribution. And I can remember when I was looking for work and right out of college, there was a limited number of jobs that blacks could get other than waiters, elevator operators, maintenance people, and cooks. And when we came to Durham, we found that there were blacks sitting at typewriters, handling money, operating businesses, and doing many trade jobs that were not common in most communities. And this made a big impact upon the black community that caused us to become famous here in Durham. And one of the things that made us want to come to Durham to see what was happening and how it was happening and how we could carry it back to other communities and do the same thing.
These are communities where we thrived and turned oppression into enterprise. There was massacres, there was burnings, there was bombings. I'll show you. Take a look.
That Sunday in 1963, love and forgiveness would be put to the test. A bomb planted by a white supremacist ripped through the building. 200 people were inside. 22 were injured. Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, Addie Mae Collins, and Cynthia Wesley. 4 little girls, all under the age of 15, were killed. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, a Birmingham native, was a friend of Denise McNair.
I said to my parents as the events were unfolding on television, why do they hate us so much? And I remember my father simply saying, they're hateful men.
I
They're
think
just
to
hateful
any
men.
reasonable person, that's a lot to digest in one sitting. So what I would like to do is bring this episode to a close. I know that I said that I would talk about J. Edgar Hoover, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Robert Byrd. However, the next 30 years that we're going to cover is very crucial, very critical, not only to Moorish history, but also America's history in general. So I would do you so much of a disservice to skip over that in a personal pursuit to talk about these gentlemen and their effects on the community as a whole and how it affects us today. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and we'll bring that into the next episode. We'll have a full head of steam and some great momentum that we'll be bringing in from this episode, and then we'll continue our greatness from there. I want to thank you for tuning in to the House of Moor. My name is Cowboy Williams. You guys have a good night.